Throughout anime, there are so many average, mediocre mentors. I'm telling you with 100% certainty, the best there is a man named Reigen. He's weaker, dumber, and less ethical than his own pupil, but still saves Mob's life time and again. What caught me off guard was that Reigen's defining moment wasn't during the peak of his success. It came when everything fell apart on live TV. The lesson he finally gives there is the one that truly changes Mob. To explain how a scam artist became the best mentor in anime, let's start from the beginning. The whole anime starts with a fluke. Instead of dismissing a child claiming to have psychic powers, he sits Mob down and genuinely offers helpful advice for him, which is a little ironic considering Reigen's entire job is basically professionally faking it. He tells Mob that his powers don't define his worth. Later, when he realizes Mob is a real Esper, he shifts towards the business opportunity but never drops the mentoring role. This moment captures Reigen perfectly. Even when he thinks someone is scamming him, his instinct is to guide them. His hierarchy is always help first, exploit second. That mix of selfishness and sincerity is why his bond with Mob feels so believable. Cause unlike Mob, who has psychic powers he can't ignore, Reigen grew up with no special abilities nor a tragic backstory. His greatest struggle was probably dealing with the horror of cafeteria food. This creates a deliberate parallel. Mob is constantly fighting to be normal despite being extraordinary, while Reigen is stuck in a normal, mundane lifestyle, yearning for the opposite. Reigen's early adult years reflect the emptiness of the day-to-day corporate role. After graduating, he bounces between meaningless jobs, dissatisfied with office life. It's not just filler, it's a subtle critique of Japanese work culture. The salaryman track, the corporate grind, the idea that happiness is tied to stable employment, Reigen hates it because he knows he has nothing special in a system that rewards conformity. His resentment becomes fuel to take that first step to be his own boss, which is inspiring until you realize his grand solution to escaping capitalism was discount massages? Initially, Reigen starts his psychic business as a scam, but the scam reveals something genuine. Yes, his exorcism are just massages, photoshopped edits, or throwing salt dramatically, but they work in a different way. People walk away comforted. This is where his one real power shines through: charisma. He can't exercise ghosts, but he can make people feel better. It looks like fraud, but he takes helping people seriously. His scam is really just packaging for his genuine empathy. And that's the paradox of Reigen. He's both the most fraudulent and the most authentic person in the room. One of the most striking moments in Mob Psycho 100 occurs at the end of season 1, when Reigen saves Mob from the crushing weight of his own abilities. The Claw arc deliberately builds up this point of crisis. Mob, cornered by enemies, inspiring under the belief that his own psychic strength makes him solely responsible for everything, is on the verge of destroying both others and himself. The stakes are made clear. He's surrounded by psychics, both friend and foe alike, seeing him only as a weapon about to detonate, his murderous intent ominously rising. And yet, in this room full of espers, it is Reigen, the powerless conman, who sees Mob most clearly. He recognizes that Mob does not truly want to unleash his full power, that what the boy needs is not another battle, but permission to be human. It's okay to run away and save yourself. Mob, moved beyond words, overwhelmed with emotion, surging past 100% of murderous intent into 1000% gratitude, transfers all of his psychic energy into Reigen, elevating him to the strongest man in the room. What follows, however, is not a spectacle of brute force. Instead of reveling in combat, Reigen redirects the moment towards philosophy, teaching. Invulnerable to every attack, he walks calmly through Claw's assault, dismantling not only their bodies, but their ideology. It's less a battle and more an impromptu intervention. Imagine losing a fight, not because your enemy outmatched you, but because he roasted your entire philosophy while shrugging off your strongest moves. That's psychological warfare at its finest. He exposes the emptiness of their obsession with violence and power, leaving them defeated not through injury, but through humiliation and disillusionment. This scene crystallizes Reigen's function within the narrative. Unlike Mob, he possesses no psychic ability, yet he becomes the most powerful figure in the room by sheer conviction and moral clarity. More importantly, it illustrates his mentorship role. Reigen teaches Mob that power is not the same as purpose, and that living authentically means more than endlessly shouldering responsibility. Therefore, in a world where strength is treated as absolute value, Reigen provides an alternative worldview, one that validates Mob's humanity above his psychic ability.
By the beginning of season 2, anyone can see that Reigen is a walking contradiction. He's out here giving Mob these deep life lessons while simultaneously using Mob's powers to pay his rent. But it goes way deeper than that, as Reigen shows us his duality in one of the exorcisms. In season 2, Reigen is approached by these young teens and they are basically wanting to get rid of a ghost in a certain forest. Reigen is on board and takes Mob with him, but this time Mob feels kinda sympathy for the spirit. The spirit is unlike all the others before. It feels very human. It is speaking to Mob and telling him that it does not want to cause any anyone harm and just wants to spend time with the Spirit family, and instantly, Mob feels sympathy for the Spirit and tells Reigen he does not feel comfortable exercising it. Instead of using Mob, which would then hurt Mob, Reigen upholds Mob's moral boundaries but at the same time informs him of the consequences, i.e. pissing off a client. It is an imperfect solution, yet it protects Mob's developing conscience, and a bit of extra pieces, Reigen takes one for the team and lies to the client that the Spirit has been exercised even though he knows he will look stupid and it is unprofessional. Isn't this now obvious that Reigen, for Mob, is a protector and gives a shit about the child? On a different note, I know I've been glazing Reigen, but it's easy to be great when everything else is working out, but when Reigen experiences the opposite of this is where we see his bad side towards Mob. In season 2, Reigen belittles Mob, and in a genuine hurtful way when Mob makes new friends and socializes with them. Reigen tells him you are easy to take advantage of Mob and downplays his growth for his own gain, even gaslighting him after saying that the work Mob does for him saves lives. This is the first step to their fallout. At first, Reigen has no idea how much he depended on Mob, so acts like everything is fine and will work out, or maybe this is him trying to cope hard that he is nothing in his business without Mob doing all of the exercising. All of this tells us that Reigen is not this perfect, always level-headed mentor towards Mob, because sometimes he's greedy and lets his own gain cloud his judgment. It is not ideal for a mentor to be like this, but I think it's essential in him becoming a great mentor. And I know the point I just said is quite sad for Reigen, but it gets even worse, because only shortly after this he gets exposed for being a fraud on live TV. Basically, he gets invited onto a TV show to show his exorcism live, and TLDR, the TV show is scripted against Reigen and his fake exorcism is exposed to the world. Reigen is destroyed at this point, and honestly, everything he has worked for is gone. The world hates him. So much so that he gets called onto a live conference where he is berated by the media with aggressive questions like, why are you such a fake and running a fraud business? This is a very dark point for Reigen's life, and during this conference we kind of see him contemplating his past actions. He is thinking about the things he said to Mob, and although his intentions were pure, he understands what he said was greedy and just dicky. And it's interesting because he pays no attention to what the media is asking him. He kind of just pauses, looks at the camera and says, "You've grown up so much, you know." Obviously talking about Mob. Reigen's whole life was just broken, but even at that dark point, dude was concerned about Mob. He was accountable, he did not let ego and pride get in the way, and dude accepted his flaw and apologized for it. Reigen is actually a realistic mentor who can relate to the audience. He has strengths and weaknesses and is willing to work on the weaknesses that impact Mob. That is why he is the greatest mentor ever. On a separate point, Mob does forgive Reigen, and Reigen also understands that he no longer needs to be the master for Mob who tells him what to do. He can see that Mob is growing as a person and is on his journey to find himself, and as his mentor, he can appreciate that and instead chooses a role where he only provides support to Mob, and the guidance he will give Mob is only the emotional aspect more than the physical. I really like this twist we see at the end of season 2. Reigen is not your typical old head who cannot change his ways. He actually is invested in what is better for Mob. He knows Mob still needs him in different ways than he used to and has no issue in being there for him. And if you have not seen the show, I hope you do. The show bangs hard, man. Season 3 is after Reigen and Mob's reconciliation, and it's also the start of the broccoli cult arc. Essentially, people start worshipping the idea of Mob as presented by this cult. It starts affecting every person Mob knows, and what seems like an innocent following actually ends up brainwashing everyone in town, finally culminating in a massive spirit broccoli tree in the middle of town and a Mr. Olympia dimple. Ironically, we don't see a lot of Reigen in this arc. He, as I mentioned earlier, is saving as more of a safe space for Mob as opposed to a guiding master. He offers Mob the same advice I think he wishes he heard a season ago. Don't let this cult stuff get to your head. However, this lack of presence in my opinion is undeniable proof that Reigen has been a great mentor as Mob is now facing challenges alone. The role of a mentor or teacher is to help the students build the toolkit necessary to face challenges, and in his own way, Reigen has passed an effective toolbox over to Mob, and the arc paints it like poetry. We see Hanazawa and Sho get absolutely Goomba stomped by the tree and its following, so it's very clearly implied that this is a Mob level threat. But the cherry on top to the shit show is the cult has even brainwashed Reigen. This signals to us, the viewer, that Mob no longer has a safety net. He has to be the one to face this challenge alone. The final sequence of this arc is such a beautiful tie into the earlier seasons, as when Mob realizes the phantom leader of the cult was a Super Saiyan Dimple, he no longer feels the need to overpower the issue. He views Dimple as a genuine friend, and we see he took Reigen's advice from season 1 to heart, as he fights a little but pulls out most of his power, relying on Dimple to sort out the rest. He no longer believes he has to be the one to shoulder all the burden. I like to believe Mob knew during the entire confrontation that he could rely on Dimple to do the right thing, hence he so willingly gave up. This arc made it really clear the effect Reigen has had on Mob and how much he has developed as a result of it. Finally, the magnum opus to all of this character analysis. Mob wants to ask out Tsubomi. I think in no part is asking out a girl for the final, most biggest task an accident, by the way. There's nothing more a teenager probably relates to. Anyways, while Mob is on the way to meet her, he gets hit by a car. This triggers an unconscious state to take over, like his body's defense kicks in and he's no longer able to control and suppress his emotions from going wild. Mob's subconscious question mark state is now in the steering wheel, blindly walking towards the park to confess its feelings. However, no longer able to control his abilities, question mark state Mob is destroying all of the town on his way, and he's uncaring and just doesn't give a shit. We see Ritsu attempt to stop Mob and remind him of the love he has for him and his family, even achieving 100% love for Mob, but is ultimately pushed aside, unable to help his brother. Hanazawa tries his hardest to help Mob, just like Mob did in their first encounter. Hanazawa is pushed to the absolute brink and knows he has no hope in stopping Mob, so he kind of changes his mission and uses all of his powers to save everyone around. Even Toichiro and Sho try to stop Mob. Villains from past season understand the threat he is, not to only himself but the world around them. They slowly make cracks in the armor, but it doesn't help this entity from pressing forward. The only person who finally made it through all of the attempts is Reigen. His final play in his bag of tricks. The last thing you'd expect from any scam artist, the truth. While actively arm wrestling this demon, he tells Mob it's okay to accept every part of himself, and him admitting to his greatest fraud is not only advising Mob to do the same, but himself doing it too. The last sequence is a culmination of all the advice and mentoring Mob has undergone, in tandem with his journey throughout the show finally clicking in place. Mob, just like his mentor, accepts the ugly parts of him as they are still him. Without lying, he would have never kept Mob as his pupil, and without being insecure and afraid, Mob would have never found Reigen. Mob finally wholly accepts who he is, and Reigen finally drops his persona for the sake of his pupil. He truly cares for Mob. Maybe Reigen is the best, as he is the most ordinary mentor for the least ordinary student.